Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fallout 76 for our weekly trip to the Purveyor. We're going to spend 1,000 Scrip on 3-star legendary ranged weapons, see what we get, talk about what makes them good, talk about what makes them not so good, and this time maybe even do a little extra testing in between. As always, if you like videos like this and you want to see more, do go ahead and subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. There's always a lot more to come on the channel. Without further ado, let's go see Mama Mumbles. And our first roll of the day is gonna be, ooh, ouch, okay. A Stalker's hunting rifle with 25% faster fire rate and 90% reduced weight. So, anyone who's followed these videos for a while knows that my opinion of Stalkers is very, very low. It's basically useless in every way. It's wonderful that in the next update they're going to remove it from melee weapons where it is absolutely, truly useless. But even on ranged weapons, it really doesn't do anything for you. It gives you a boost in VATS accuracy, basically doubling your VATS accuracy if you're not in combat. But here's the thing. If you're not in combat, you have time to position yourself to get that anyway. So what are you really getting out of it? And even with that in mind, I'm still not entirely sure that it works. 25% faster fire rate on a weapon like this, I'm not even sure that that works. So they are removing that from single shot weapons, which is good, but even on a weapon like this, I don't think we're really getting anything out of that. 90% reduced weight, it's a nice effect to have, but by the time we mod this thing, it's basically going to go away. We'll lose a few pounds, but not much. But you know what? I'm curious about the faster fire rate. Let's take a look. Let's take a look in detail here before we proceed. I want to know for sure, does faster fire rate do anything on this weapon? We'll just head down to the basement real quick here and borrow Mama Mumbles' weapons workbench, craft ourselves up a standard hunting rifle. It'll have the same mods as the one we just got. The one we got as a legendary has no modifications at all. So it's going to do exactly the same damage. It should have exactly the same fire rate, except for that legendary effect. And now we'll go ahead and test it out. This is the faster fire rate version. And you'll see the timer go here. And I'm just mashing my, my trigger button as fast as I can to see how quickly we can fire off our 5 shots. And there we go, 808. So that's fine. Now let's see the regular one. We'll do the same thing. We'll just run the timer and mash that button as fast as I can and see how it works. It does feel a bit slower. Let's see if it really, really matches out. And there we go, 937. So that confirms it. Faster fire rate does have an effect on this weapon. It's not really 25% faster. I'm guessing there's maybe 2 stages to that animation and part of it is sped up and part of it isn't, but it does have some effect, so that's good to know. Next up, what do we have? We've got an Executioner's Ultrasight Gatling Laser with VATS hit chance and 50 damage resistance while aiming. So here is kind of an interesting story. The Executioner's effect I love on heavy guns. Heavy guns do damage by doing lots of damage fast, not based on per shot damage, but just high DPS. Because they fire fast and they don't need to be reloaded often. So Executioners is a good effect here because you're putting a lot of shots on most targets. Unfortunately, VATS hit chance doesn't really fit this weapon. In the next update, that's going to get a boost from 33% to 50%, which is awesome, but most heavy gunners are not heavily invested in VATS. They don't have a lot of agility built into their builds, so you're not really going to get a whole lot of mileage out of that. Now, this would have been a lot more interesting a few weeks ago when we all thought unyielding power armor was coming, because then instead of building agility into your build, you could have relied on that from being low health with unyielding power armor. But now that has been taken away, so one more kind of option to do interesting things is gone. So that's kind of sad. I get it. I understand both sides of the argument on removing that, but it does make these legendary perks basically useless on heavy guns, for most players at least. 50 damage resistance while aiming doesn't hurt, but with diminishing effects, with diminishing returns on those, you don't get a lot out of that. What do we have next? We've got an Instigating bow with bashing damage and 90% reduced weight. So let's talk about this one. Instigating is another case where it's an effect that used to be really good, but it got nerfed after one Wasteland. And now, instead of doubling all the damage you do, it basically just doubles the base damage of the weapon. So it renders it pretty useless on a lot of weapons, but on weapons like this that have high base damage, it does pretty good. You still get a little something out of that. So this is not a bad weapon to roll Instigating on. Bashing damage will increase to 50% after the next update, but I'm convinced that that is just Bethesda trolling us because they know that bashing damage is terrible and useless in every way. Unless you have a shredding barrel minigun, it's absolutely worthless on everything else. 90% reduced weight is kind of nice. And it's nice on a weapon like this because there aren't a lot of mods to put on here to kind of mess with that weight. So if you were a stealthy build built for something else and you just wanted to carry around something like this for occasional fun, you can do that. It makes it a lot easier to do. Arrows aren't particularly heavy. The weapon's nice and quiet, so it suits any stealth build. The Instigating effect does something for you there, especially if you're not invested in the perk cards for this weapon already. You feel like you get a little more mileage out of that. So as kind of a secondary weapon, this isn't a bad roll. Bashing damage is worthless, but the Instigating effect and 90% reduced weight could make it potentially useful. All right, Mama Mumbles, what do you got for us to play with next? We've got a Ghoul Slayer's Tesla rifle with VATS critical shots doing more damage and 50 damage resistance while aiming. So here is a weapon that is going to get maybe a little better with the next update. All the different Slayer effects, damage to ghouls, damage to Scorch, damage to super mutants, that's going to go from 30% to 50%, which is a nice little buff. Personally, I don't think it's enough. I think it should go to 100%. We're being a little stingy with damage in this game at this point, and I don't really see why. At this point, it looks like Bethesda is kind of trying to balance things, which is a nice idea, but as long as we have hacked weapons on PC, legacy energy explosive weapons running around, we've got exploited in nuclear winter weapons that do crazy damage. As long as those things exist and Bethesda just continues to pretend they don't, then the idea that there's balance in this game is just laughable. So pick a lane. It's time to choose. Either go for balance or just go crazy and let us have fun with things. I say go crazy and let us have fun with things. I'm kind of more of that mindset at this point. But either way works. You just have to pick one. You can't do both. So on that note, with this weapon, well, let's take a look at the effects. The VATS critical shots doing more damage. That's kind of useless here. This isn't a weapon that you're really going to use in VATS. This is more of a hip-fire weapon that you'll use at big events when you've got big mobs, so you can get lots of tags on things. That way you can generate a lot more XP. It's not really a VATS kind of weapon. 50 damage resistance while aiming. It's not nothing, but again, you're probably using this more as a hip-fire weapon, so I don't think you're going to get a lot of mileage out of that. With that said, the Ghoul Slayer's effect is not a bad one to have on a Tesla rifle. One of the big places you're going to use a weapon like this is going to be an event like Radiation Rumble, where you've got huge mobs of ghouls running around, so doing a little extra damage to them certainly doesn't hurt. If you like to farm White Spring for XP and other ghoul locations, then you can definitely get some mileage out of this, and it's kind of nice because you can tag the mobs even when other players are around. You're probably not going to kill everything outright, so everybody gets some shots in, but you'll also get to tag everything. So this isn't a bad one. I'd still probably prefer quad over this, but in terms of specialized effects, it's not bad. What else do we have here? Now this, on the other hand, this is a complete piece of trash. We've got the Stalker's effect, which we've already talked about, is completely worthless. I really just don't see the value in it at all. Bashing damage, yes, it will go up to 50%. It's still useless, especially on a weapon like this. And 90% reduced weight, that's really the only thing this has going for it, is You know, if you just kind of like to pull out a black powder weapon every now and again and shoot it at things, then I guess you can have some fun with this weapon because it's easy to carry around. But the other legendary effects are really doing absolutely nothing for you. Let's see what we've got next. Now, this one's a bit more interesting. Here we've got an Executioner's pump action shotgun with 10% damage while aiming and faster movement speed while aiming. The Executioner's effect here is not going to be particularly useful on really squishy things like ghouls and scorched and, you know, commies in the deep. You're really low health enemies. You're not going to get a lot out of that because you're going to kill most of those things in 1 or 2 shots with a pump action shotgun, even if it didn't have legendary effects. But where it's going to kick in is going to be tankier things like super mutants, behemoths, scorch beasts, bosses. That's where you get a little more mileage out of something like that. 10% damage while aiming, that's not much right now, but next week, that's going to get a buff to 25%. So essentially what you have, if you're not a dedicated VATS user and you have a weapon like this, is you basically get a 25% damage buff all the time, and then the Executioner's effect is a 50% buff on top of that when the enemy is at lower health. So you've got a pretty good combo there where you've got some pretty significant damage bonuses, so that's not bad. Faster movement speed while aiming, sadly for most players that's not going to do anything for you. If you've got the Speed Demon mutation, you've already maxed out your movement speed, so you're going to see nothing from that. If you're a lower level player or you're running without mutations or without that mutation, then you might see a little benefit to it. But for most players at a higher level, you're not going to see that. So once you've been playing for a while, no benefit to that. But the first 2 effects do, in my opinion at least, pair up pretty well together. Maybe this isn't the ideal weapon for that. I think an Executioner's heavy gun with those 2 effects would be pretty stellar, but this is still pretty good. Not bad at all. Let's see what we've got next. And now we've got something not so good. We've got a Zealot's double barrel shotgun with bashing damage and reduced weight. So the Zealot's effect will be getting that buff to 50%. The double barrel shotgun is a fun weapon to use. I like it. It's fun. My favorite effect on it is still quad. Bloodied would probably be a close second, or something else that does damage across the board, maybe even anti-armor. But Zealots, not so much. Bashing damage, total trash, totally worthless. 90% reduced weight, better than nothing, but ultimately this is still going to get turned back in for Scrip. There just aren't really any good effects here that are going to be useful all around. If you're a lower or mid-level player and you grab something like this, then you probably get a little something out of it because you're going to encounter more Scorched. So you'll get a little more mileage out of this, but it's not something you're going to keep around for the end game. Let's see what we've got left. We've got 3 more to go, and now we've got a Berserker's Ultrasight laser pistol with faster fire rate and a VATS critical meter filling 15% faster. So the Berserker's effect is going to get a buff, essentially, in the new update. Currently, it gives you more damage the lower your damage resistance, but it also does less damage if you have damage resistance. They're taking away that second part. They're taking away the negative. So that's a good thing. It is going to make it easier to run a Berserker's build and make it a little more forgiving. Unfortunately, it's still only, I believe, a 50% damage buff, which just isn't good. In my opinion, it's much harder to stay alive as a Berserker's build than it is as a Bloodied build. And Bloodied has so many different things that synergize with it, and its base legendary damage is double that of Berserker's. So yeah, that's not cool. You know, you got to buff that up a little bit, and maybe that'll give people a reason to run Berserkers, but as it stands, it doesn't. 25% faster fire rate. You put an automatic mod on this, that's going to be a good thing. VATS critical meter filling faster is a good thing. Unfortunately, it's still an energy weapon, and energy weapons are woefully underpowered in Fallout 76. At this point, I almost feel like there was supposed to be maybe an energy weapon damage perk card that somehow never made it into the game, and they just haven't realized it, because these things really need a good 50 to 60% damage buff to be useful for anybody, and it's just not there. Some perk cards that would do that, well, that might be a good way to get there, but unfortunately, That doesn't seem to be coming, so not a huge fan of this one, although Berserkers is going to get a bit better. All right, 2 more rolls left, and now we've got a Furious double-barrel shotgun with VATS critical shots doing more damage and 25% less VATS AP cost. So this is an interesting weapon. The Furious effect, I feel like, is kind of lost on this. Outside of big bosses or really tanky enemies, you're not going to put enough shots on a target to really take advantage of that effect. So most things you're shooting with a double-barrel shotgun are dead in 1 or 2 shots. So you're not really going to get a whole lot of mileage out of Furious. But the 2nd and 3rd stars, those are really good. That's critical shots doing more damage, less VATS AP cost. Those 2 perks synergize really, really well together. Doing more VATS critical damage, if you've got a build that enables you to do more VATS crits, then that's going to be a pretty serious damage buff all around. Less VATS AP cost means you can run this thing in VATS all damn day and really never notice or never feel like you need to worry about refilling your AP. So those 2 things synergize extremely well together. So while the primary effect is not ideal, the 2nd and 3rd make this a good weapon on their own. Is it a god roll weapon? No. If this was bloodied or quad and it had both of those, well, now we'd be talking. But it's still good. This is still a good roll. Especially for somebody who maybe doesn't have all those god roll weapons. Let's see what she's got for us to wrap things up. All right, can we do something good? Yes, we can. Oh my. Okay, Mama Mumbles, old man McRib must have stopped by and been good to you. Because we've got an anti-armor combat shotgun with exploding bullets and 15% faster reload. So the anti-armor effect on shotguns is very useful. Most shotguns, aside from this one, don't have the ability to have an armor penetration mod put on them. And there is no perk for them to bypass armor either. So a legendary effect that does that is pretty good. And the other side of it is the way shotgun damage works. You take all that high damage, that 177 damage gets divided among 8 pellets. So you've got a bunch of projectiles doing a smaller damage number, which means armor is more effective against them. And that makes sense. That should be the case against a shotgun. So having an anti-armor shotgun, that's going to be really effective. If we put the anti-armor magazine mod on here, we're going to get even better. Explosive gives us a nice damage buff all around. 15% faster reload. This weapon doesn't have a particularly slow reload to begin with, but if we can speed it up, that's always a good thing. I think we may see that in a weapon spotlight in the near future, if not next week. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to wrap up our run for today. So this was an interesting one. We got to test out the faster fire rate effect on a hunting rifle and see that it does give us a little bit of benefit, just not much of one. I imagine that will translate to other similarly operated weapons. We've got a couple of really interesting things from Mama Mumbles, including that anti-armor explosive combat shotgun. So this was definitely a good stop to the Purveyor at the Rusty Pick. But with all that said, I don't have anything else for you today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, remember to go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter. There's always more to come, and I do hope that I see you all next time.